Welcome to Education in Focus. I'm your host, Eliana Kernodle. During last week's debate between candidates for vice president, the two sparred over school shootings, illustrating the ideological divide between the main political parties. Joining me to discuss this is Chalkboard News editor Brendan Clary. Brendan, what did J.D. Vance and Tim Walz have to say about school safety?
Yeah, essentially they took very different approaches on the best way to ensure that schools are safe. And specifically, Senator J.D. Vance from Ohio, the Republican candidate, he was asked whether he would support charging parents of students who are accused of school shootings with involuntary manslaughter, like what happened in Oxford. And he said that it would depend on the case and that he would trust law enforcement to take the right approach there. And, he said that we needed to do better, right? So again, kind of this understanding tone. And I just, before we get too far into it, I want to say I was really encouraged actually by the dialogue between the candidates. It was very refreshing to hear people respectfully disagree about stuff, and something that I think kind of no matter what your thoughts on politics are, it was actually a very good conversation. And there was some heat, some tension, but like never like an inappropriate amount, and never really in a way that was hard to watch. Like I think some political debates are. So I just wanted to say that was a really fun and kind of encouraging thing to see. And there was some overlap, right, on the fact that something is wrong and something needs to be fixed. But then it kind of ended there, unfortunately, right? That the way that these parties think about this is completely different.
Yeah, could you get into kind of the specifics of the points that they argued?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, Vance said that we need to protect kids. And so he said that, I don't like to say it this way, but basically we need to beef up school security. And that we have to, he said we need to make the doors lock better. We have to make things stronger. We've got to make the windows, bulletproof, and we have to have more school resource officers. Because he said, the idea that you can, quote, magically wave a wand and take guns out of the hands of bad guys does not fit with recent experience. So he said, we've got to make our schools safer, and we've got to have some common sense bipartisan solutions for how to do that. And then Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, he basically said that, a school shooting is terrible, and that, we've seen too many of them. He said, I'm a hunter. He said, Vice President Kamala Harris is a hunter. I haven't seen that reported anywhere else, so that might be a gaffe. Interesting if true, kind of thing, right? But he said that the Second Amendment is there, which is true. And that, he said that there's a way to cut down and curtail on gun violence without taking away guns. And I think that in Minnesota, he said that they have red flag laws, background checks, and that you can start to kind of figure things out there. So I think basically in a nutshell, you have the Republican candidate J.D. Vance saying we need to beef up security because you can't just get guns out of the hands of bad guys. And then from Tim Walz, you have him saying we need to put in these reforms or these checks to make sure that we don't have bad guys with guns, right? We don't have the wrong kinds of guns, right? So you can still do maybe have your hunting rifle, but there's no semi-automatic rifles. And again, without a lot of the specifics there, I think Vance definitely had more of those specific measures of here's what we do, the steps that we take. And with Walz, it was really we can have guns, but then also try to keep people from using these other kinds of guns, or keep them away from people who would maybe do harm with them.
And there was a really interesting moment that kind of highlighted the different focuses even further, and that was their exchange about Finland. What happened there?
Yeah, so Walz said to the moderator that there are things we can do, again, with not infringing on your Second Amendment rights. And he said that Finland is a great example. Walz said that he'd spent time in Finland and that there's a high gun ownership rate there, but they don't experience the same high rate of school shootings that we do in the United States. And so he said that, here are the things that we have to do to try to make our schools safer instead of making them look like a fort. We can take these protections. But then Vance replied in response to that. He said that, the Finland is a great example. again, he was agreeing with Walz again. It was kind of a healthy dialogue, but he said that if you look at the rates of depression and anxiety and substance abuse, that in the U.S. they're much higher, right? So when Vance looks at it, he's saying like the underlying problem needs to be addressed, and he said that we have quite a mental health crisis in this country, and that we need to get to the root causes of it. So he said, I don't think that's the whole reason we have a bad gun violence problem, but he thinks it's a part of it. So you have, from these different points of view, these different political parties, again, these are the leaders of these political parties, kind of these thought leaders, or, representatives of the political parties in America, looking at this issue. And on one hand saying like, there's reforms that they have in Finland that we can enact here. And then the other is like, well, look at all these other problems that we have in America that they don't have in Finland. Like, couldn't that be part of the problem as well? And so I think that that's, the tension between these is, in one, you can just legislate this and make some fixes from the government's perspective. And in the other one, it's more like we have these societal, like deeper issues that are the problem, and we need to try to fix those somehow. And I don't know how you would necessarily do that with policy on either side, to really try to straddle the balance between Second Amendment rights and, personal freedoms and, those kinds of things. Those are very difficult challenges on either side.
Yeah, definitely an interesting conversation. But like any debate, there's only so much detail you can get into and only so much detail they want to get into. But thank you for your insights on this story, Brendan. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at chalkboardnews.com.